Hello, my name is Talita Pruitt and I'm a communication professor at Bakersfield College. Today I would like to talk to you about my Clear Action research project on the impact of instructor and peer interactions in cognitive engagement in AODs. So as instructors, we know that learning does not happen in a vacuum and that interaction is very important. Moore in 1989 established three different types of interactions that are essential in distance learning: learner to content, learner to instructor, and learner to learner interaction. In online environments, asynchronous online discussions have been used as a tool to promote learner to learner interaction. And some scholars go as far as to say that this type of interaction is superior than the discussion that takes place in a traditional classroom because it is not limited by time and it is more equitable in the sense that you don't have a small group of students monopolizing the conversation. Now, most of the research on AODs have focused on the quantity and not the quality of the interaction. So for my intervention, I wanted to focus on the quality of the interaction, and I used Garrison's definition of quality as cognitive engagement. So what I did is that I have an assignment in my classes every week. That's the reading notes assignment, which means that after their weekly reading, students have to answer to three questions. What was the most challenging, the most useful idea, and then one question they may still have after completing the reading. And it used to be an assignment that they submit to me as an instructor. And as my intervention, I turned it into a discussion. I have two sections of ComV 6 intercultural communication that I teach this spring 2023. So I decided to treat one as my control group and keep the assignment as it was originally, as just a traditional assignment with no interaction. And for my second section that was also randomly selected, I turned the reading notes assignment into an AOD. And students are now required to have to do two peer replies. So they have both instructor feedback and peer interaction. Here's an example of what it looks like. So this is part of a student real question. So there's not the answer to the three prompts, just the question. And rather than just replying on SpeedGrader, where I grade the assignment, I write some stuff on SpeedGrader. But what I do is that I reply to the question that students ask on in a threaded reply along with other students. And I try to model the type of cognitive engagement I expect. So using a lot of contextual factors, personal experiences, references to the reading, and just a hefty response, while still using memes and GIFs and images to kind of mimic the interaction that happens on social media. In terms of methodology, I did a content analysis just of the original postings to compare apples and apples since the control group did not have peer replies. And I used Sparks, Langers, and Simmons framework for reflective pedagogical thinking as my coding scheme. So here's a table of the 5 levels of cognitive engagement that exist in this framework. And here's some real examples. Feel free to pause that I found. So all the examples here are data that I collected in my study. So I went ahead and I coded all the postings. These are just part of the postings with the coding scheme for both the control group and the experimental group. And then after I did that, I input the data and I ran on SPSS a t-test comparing the differences in cognitive engagement between the control group and the experimental group. And what I found out is that in my first point of data collection on week 3, there were no significant difference. But then on week 6 later on, there was significant difference between the control group and the experimental group, suggesting that over time, students were picking up on how to respond with higher levels of cognitive engagement. So the quality of their responses for the experimental group was actually improving. And the descriptive statistics show the same thing. So the posting, just one posting for the control group versus the experimental group makes sense because one is an assignment and one is the discussion. But it goes on to have a higher average of words per assignment. And then what really struck me is that in the experimental group, my response rate, so there were more students participating in the assignment over time as opposed to the control group. In terms of conclusion, the big takeaways for me is that peer interaction and instructor feedback do have a positive impact on cognitive engagement over time. So don't give up if you are putting all this time to do custom feedback for to your students, and you're not seeing immediate changes. Over time, with formative feedback, they will improve the quality of their responses. That's what my study found out. Super important to set the expectations early in the semester, front loading. Use authentic rubrics. I also have had obviously a different rubric for a discussion because I had the peer reply aspect, but I use scholarly work to find a rubric that measure cognitive engagement better. And then have authentic interactions. It worked for me really well to have the open response and to interact with them in a more authentic manner. And I know I've gone over time, so this is just a quick look on the rubric difference between the two groups.